The spaceport of Velta 9 was alive with the buzz of traders, scavengers, and travelers from all over the galaxy. Its neon lights flickered against the backdrop of a dark, dusty world, a place where deals were made in the shadows, and every corner held a secret waiting to be discovered. Among the crowd stood Bran, a human freighter pilot who had learned the art of survival in places like this. He was tall, his face weathered from years of space travel, with a deep scar running across his cheek. He wasn't a man of words. He was a man of action, of doing whatever it took to stay one step ahead of those who would take advantage of his kind. Bran wasn't here for the usual kinds of deals, cargo runs, parts, fuel, and the like. He was after something different, the game. It was a rare opportunity in the underworld of the galaxy, where the highest bidders played in a high-stakes card game known as the core bet. Only the wealthiest and most influential beings could get an invite, and Bran had somehow earned his place. The venue was a private, dimly lit room tucked away in the back of a decrepit cantina. Holographic tables, floating cards, and dazzling chips filled the space with an air of excitement and danger. Bran didn't care much for the game itself, but the reward was worth the risk. A chance to gain something extraordinary. As he entered the room, Bran noticed the other players at the table. There was Threx, a reptilian warlord whose scales shimmered in the low light, and Sully, a mysterious cyborg with more implants than Bran had ever seen on one being. Then there was the Baron, the one they called the most dangerous of all. A tall, slender alien with pale green skin and piercing eyes. His presence alone made the air feel colder, heavier. Bran sat down across from the Baron, his eyes scanning the alien's face. There was no smile, no warmth, just cold calculation. But Bran didn't flinch. He was here for one reason: to win. The cards were dealt. The game began. Hours passed, and the tension grew thick. The stakes climbed higher with every hand played, and Bran could feel the weight of each decision. The others were good. No, they were better than good. But Bran had something they didn't. He had a knack for reading people, an instinct that had saved him more times than he could count. Finally, it came down to the last round. The Baron placed his chips on the table with a slow, deliberate motion. His eyes locked with Bran's. There was a smirk, a flicker of amusement. "You're bold, human," the Baron said, his voice smooth like silk. But there was a hint of something darker behind it. "Do you understand what you're betting on?" Bran didn't answer. Instead, he threw his chips into the center of the table. The last of his winnings from countless deals and cargo runs. "All in," he said, his voice steady. The Baron raised an eyebrow. He hadn't expected it. Most humans would have backed down by now. But Bran wasn't like most humans. The game ended moments later, and Bran had won. It was a rare thing, something that no one could take from him now. But as he stood to collect his winnings, the Baron's cold smile returned. "You've earned your prize," the Baron said, his voice laced with a strange finality. "Come with me." Without waiting for a reply, the Baron led Bran through a narrow corridor behind the game room to a small chamber. Inside, a large crate sat in the center of the room, humming with an odd energy. The Baron stood next to it, his hands clasped behind his back. Bran raised an eyebrow. "What's in the box?" The Baron's smile widened. "Open it," he said simply. Bran stepped forward, cautiously examining the crate. The metal surface was etched with symbols Bran didn't recognize. Slowly he pried it open, and inside, lying still, was a figure, a girl. She looked different. Her skin shimmered with a faint silvery blue hue, and her features were delicate, yet strong. Her eyes, closed for now, seemed to hold an ancient sadness, a quiet depth Bran couldn't quite understand. But there was something else too, something powerful radiating from her. The Baron's voice interrupted Bran's thoughts. She is not just any girl human. She is the last of a lost race, a prize of unimaginable worth. Bran didn't know what to make of it. His hands hovered over the girl, unsure of what to do. He could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on him. This wasn't just another deal. This was something bigger. And as the Baron turned to leave, Bran's thoughts raced. What had he just won? And what did the alien noble want with her? Bran stood frozen, staring at the girl inside the crate. Her skin shimmered softly in the dim light of the room, a faint glow like moonlight on water. Her features were delicate, almost angelic, but there was something more to her, something powerful. She looked fragile, yet there was an undeniable aura of strength around her, like a storm hidden inside a calm sky. The girl lay unmoving, her eyes closed, her breathing slow and steady. Bran hesitated, unsure of what to do. This wasn't just any cargo. This wasn't some rare gem or alien artifact. The Baron's words echoed in his mind. The last of a lost race. What did that even mean? Bran had seen many strange things in his travels. Freaks of nature, experiments gone wrong, and strange creatures that defied explanation. But this felt different. There was something unsettling about it. He had just won a dangerous game, and now he had a living, breathing mystery in front of him. Taking a deep breath, Bran carefully crouched down beside the crate. He reached out, his hand trembling slightly as it hovered over the girl. His fingers brushed against her arm, and the moment he made contact, something strange happened. The room seemed to hum with a quiet energy. Bran felt a spark of warmth travel from her skin to his hand. It was like she was connected to him somehow. The sensation sent a chill down his spine, and he quickly pulled his hand back, heart pounding. The girl stirred, her eyelids fluttering, as if she was waking from a long sleep. Bran's breath caught in his throat as her eyes opened, revealing a brilliant pale blue that seemed almost otherworldly. For a moment, neither of them moved. Her gaze met his, and Bran felt as though she was searching him, reading him in ways he couldn't understand. "Who are you?" Bran asked softly, though he didn't really expect an answer. After all, she was an alien, and human languages were foreign to most of them. To his surprise, the girl spoke, her voice quiet and delicate, but with an underlying strength. "Mira," she whispered. Bran blinked, unsure if he had heard her correctly. "Mira," he repeated. She nodded once, slowly. Her eyes never left his. It was clear she was trying to understand him, but also that she was just as confused about him as he was about her. "Where are you from?" Bran asked, his voice gentle. He didn't want to scare her, but he was desperate for answers. Mira didn't answer immediately. Instead, her gaze shifted as if she were looking past him, seeing something he couldn't. Then, with a quiet sigh, she said, "Lost." The word hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Bran furrowed his brow, trying to make sense of it. Lost. Was she from a destroyed world? Had she been abandoned by her people? And why had the Baron, an alien noble with a reputation for cruelty, had her locked away in a crate? "I don't understand," Bran admitted, his voice tinged with frustration. "Why did he give you to me?" Mira didn't answer right away. Instead, she seemed to be gathering her strength, her hands moving slowly, as if testing her own body. Then she looked up at him again, her expression serious. "He wants to control me." Bran felt a cold shiver run down his spine. He had known the Baron was dangerous, but this was different. She was a living being, not some weapon or tool. And yet the Baron had locked her away like she was nothing more than an object, a prize to be won and controlled. "Why would he want to control you?" Bran asked, trying to make sense of the situation. "What's so special about you?" Mira's eyes darkened, and for a brief moment Bran saw a flicker of something, rage or perhaps fear, before it was quickly hidden behind her calm exterior. "I am the last of my kind," she said quietly, her voice barely more than a whisper. "My people, we could control the machines of the universe, ships, cities, entire worlds. We were the greatest civilization in the galaxy." She paused, her eyes clouded with distant memories. "Until they came, the ones who destroyed us." Bran listened, his heart heavy. The galaxy was full of stories like this, of ancient civilizations lost to war, of powerful races brought to ruin by greed and ambition. But something about Mira's words struck him. She wasn't just a survivor, she was something more. "And now," Mira continued, her voice steadier, "I am all that's left." Bran's mind raced. The last of a powerful race, the last of a people who could control machines. It made sense now why the Baron would want her. If he controlled her, he could control anything. A weapon like that could give him power beyond imagination. Bran stood up, his thoughts swirling. He couldn't let that happen. He couldn't let Mira fall into the hands of someone like the Baron. "Don't worry," Bran said, his voice firm. "You're not going back to him." Mira met his eyes, and for the first time since she had awakened, she seemed to relax, just slightly. A small, almost imperceptible smile tugged at the corners of her lips. The stars outside the drifter's cockpit blurred as Bran punched in the coordinates for the next jump. His hands moved quickly, adjusting controls he'd grown accustomed to over the years. Mira sat quietly in the seat beside him, her eyes fixed on the stars beyond the viewport. Bran could feel the weight of her gaze, though she remained silent, lost in thought. He didn't know what to make of her yet. She was unlike anyone he'd ever met. An alien girl with the power to control technology, and yet she seemed so human. But the words she had spoken to him earlier still rang in his ears. "I am the last of my kind." The silence between them felt heavy. But Bran wasn't one for small talk. He preferred the hum of the ship's engines and the feel of the stars as they passed by. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Something dangerous. Suddenly, an alert flashed on the console. Bran's eyes narrowed as the familiar red lights of a warning flashed across the screen. It wasn't the usual pirate, attack, or space debris warning. This was something different. A ship had appeared on their scanners. It was fast, moving with precision, and it wasn't on a normal flight path. Bran's fingers danced over the controls, trying to make sense of it. "Mira," he said, glancing over at her. "Do you know what this is?" Mira's expression remained calm, but her eyes flickered to the console and then back to Bran. "It's him," she said simply. "The Baron." Bran's heart skipped a beat. The Baron, here, so soon. How had they found them so quickly? Before Bran could react, the ship's warning systems went off again. This time it wasn't just an alert. The unmistakable hum of weapons charging up echoed through the cockpit. The Baron had already locked onto them. "Damn it," Bran muttered, his hands flying over the controls. The Drifter was a decent ship, but it wasn't designed for speed or combat. It wasn't built for escape. Bran needed to think fast, or they were dead. "We're going to have to outrun them," he said, his voice steady but tense. "I'll make a jump through the asteroid field. They won't be able to follow us in there." Mira's expression remained unchanged. "They will try," she said softly. Bran's fingers hovered over the navigation console, but he couldn't ignore the truth in her words. The Baron would stop at nothing to get her back. The Baron wasn't just a nobleman, he was a predator, and Bran had become the prey. "Hold on," Bran said as he punched in the coordinates for a nearby asteroid field. It wasn't a perfect plan. The field was dangerous, but it was there. Best shot. The Drifter's engines roared to life as the ship lurched forward, shooting toward the field at full speed. Bran's heart raced in his chest, his mind focused on the narrow path ahead. The massive rocks and debris of the field loomed in front of them, spinning wildly in the vacuum of space. The Baron's ship was behind them, too close for comfort, its engines glowing like a deadly beacon in the darkness. Bran took a deep breath and steered the ship into the asteroid field, weaving in and out of the massive rocks. His hands moved with the grace of someone who had done this 1,000 times, but his mind was sharp, aware that one wrong move could send them crashing into the dark void. The asteroid field was chaotic, sharp turns, tight squeezes, and unpredictable movements of space debris. Bran's eyes flicked back to the console, watching as the Baron's ship followed closely behind, its weapons charging once more. A blast of energy rocked the drifter, shaking the entire ship. Bran swore under his breath, gripping the controls harder. He could feel the strain in his muscles as he pushed the ship harder, trying to break free from the Baron's relentless pursuit. "Mira, can you do anything?" Bran shouted, his voice edged with panic. Mira was silent for a moment, her eyes closed as if she were concentrating. Then, without warning, the ship seemed to hum, differently this time. Bran felt the subtle shift in the ship's systems, as if something had clicked into place. "I can help," Mira said quietly. The drifter suddenly surged forward, faster than Bran had ever seen it move. The engines roared with a new intensity, and the ship's systems began to respond in ways that Bran couldn't fully understand. It was as though Mira was controlling the very heart of the ship itself, guiding it through the asteroid field with a precision Bran couldn't have achieved on his own. The Baron's ship was left behind, its weapons firing wildly as it tried to keep up. But no matter how fast it was, it couldn't match the speed and agility the drifter now had. Mira was guiding them, leading them to safety. Bran let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding, his grip loosening on the controls. They were escaping, for now at least. As they flew deeper into the field, Bran glanced at Mira. Her eyes were closed, her brow furrowed in concentration, but she looked more powerful than he had ever seen her before. "We're not safe yet," Mira said quietly, as if she could sense his thoughts. "He won't stop hunting us." Bran nodded, his jaw set. He knew she was right. The Baron would never give up, but for now, they had a chance. And that was all Bran needed to keep going. The asteroid field eventually faded behind them, but the danger was far from over. Bran's hands still gripped the controls of the drifter, his eyes flicking nervously to the scanners every few seconds. The Baron was a hunter, and Bran knew better than to think he would stop at a little setback. They had bought some time, but only a little. Mira had been silent for most of the journey, her eyes closed, her hands resting on her lap. She seemed lost in thought, her mind somewhere far away. Bran had tried to engage her, but she was distant, and he wasn't sure if it was because of the strain of their escape or something deeper. After several hours of drifting in the quiet dark, Bran took the ship out of the asteroid field and into a quieter, safer part of space, a neutral zone far from the reaches of the Baron's territory. He set the ship to autopilot and leaned back in his chair, exhaling deeply. "You okay?" Bran asked, glancing over at Mira. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she stared out the window at the swirling stars beyond, her eyes distant and troubled. Her face was pale, and there was a weight about her, something that made Bran feel as though she was carrying a burden far too heavy for her small frame. Finally, Mira spoke, her voice low and soft. "I saw it again." Bran frowned, leaning forward slightly. "Saw what?" "The fire," Mira whispered. "The fire that destroyed my people." Bran's heart ached at the pain in her voice. He had no idea what she had been through, but the sorrow in her words was unmistakable. He'd never seen anyone so broken, and it hurt him in ways he didn't expect. You don't have to talk about it if you don't want to, Bran said, his voice gentle. But he knew that she needed to share whatever was weighing on her soul. Mira shook her head slowly. No, it's not that. I need to remember. I need to understand. She paused, taking a deep breath, her eyes closing. For a moment, I remember the fire. I remember the ships in the sky, the burning cities, the screams. Bran's throat tightened as he listened, feeling a deep sense of helplessness. There were so many things he didn't understand about Mira's past, but he could feel the power of her memories as if they were his own. I was just a child, she continued, her voice shaking slightly. I didn't understand what was happening. My people were once the rulers of the stars. We built cities that spanned entire planets, created machines that could move mountains. We were unstoppable. She paused again, her face hardening. Bran's eyes never left her. He could sense the anger beneath her words, but also a deep sense of loss. And then they came. They destroyed everything. My people were betrayed. The ones who we trusted, the ones we believed in, they turned on us. Mira's voice grew softer, more distant. I was hidden away by my parents. I was just a child, too young to understand the full extent of what had happened. They put me in a ship, just a small private ship, and sent me away. Bran swallowed, understanding now. Mira hadn't been hiding from danger. She had been saved. She was the last of her people, the last survivor of a civilization that had fallen. But the cost of that survival was a lifetime of isolation. And the Baron? Bran asked quietly. He was one of the ones who betrayed us, Mira said, her voice hardening with the weight of the truth. He was part of the coalition that wiped us out, the ones who thought they could take control of everything we had. Our technology, our cities. They wanted it all. Bran felt a pang of anger rise in his chest. The idea that someone like the Baron, a man who had so much already, would destroy an entire race just for power. It sickened him. But why keep you alive? Bran asked. Why would he do that? Mira's eyes flickered to him, her expression a mix of sadness and anger. Because I am the last. I am the only one left who can wield the power of the Zirathi. My blood carries the key to their greatest machines, their weapons, their cities. The Baron thinks he can control me, bend me to his will, and use me to rebuild what he lost. He wants to own everything we built, everything we were. Bran's jaw clenched. He's wrong. Mira looked at him then, her eyes filled with something Bran couldn't quite place. Hope? Maybe, but something more powerful too. You think so? She asked, her voice quiet but strong. Bran nodded, his eyes meeting hers with a quiet resolve. You're not a tool. You're a person. No one controls you. A brief, fleeting smile appeared on Mira's lips, as if she had found something she had lost. Maybe hope, or maybe trust. Bran didn't know, but for the first time, she seemed to stand a little taller in her seat. I will fight, Mira said, softly, determination in her voice. I will never let him have what he took from us. Bran smiled, the weight of the moment settling over him. Then we'll fight together. And for the first time, Bran felt the spark of something bigger. Something he couldn't yet understand, but something that was about to change the course of their lives forever. The quiet hum of the drifter's engines filled the cockpit, but inside, Bran and Mira were far from calm. The stars outside seemed far too distant, as if even the universe itself was watching them carefully, waiting for their next move. Bran had been thinking about what Mira had told him. The story of her people, of the devastation the Baron had caused. The weight of it all sat heavy on his shoulders. He couldn't imagine what it would be like to lose everything. A home, a civilization, a way of life. But what Mira had said was clear. The Baron wanted power, and he would stop at nothing to get it. He would come after them, no matter where they went. "We can't just keep running," Bran said quietly, his hands resting on the controls. He stared at the map on the console, the path he'd plotted before them filled with dead ends. "The Baron will track us down eventually." Mira had been silent for a long time, her eyes distant, as if she were deep in thought. Finally she spoke. "I know. We need to strike back." Bran's eyes flicked to her. Strike back? He hadn't expected those words. What could they do against someone like the Baron, a man who had armies, fleets, and the resources of a whole galaxy at his disposal? "Yes," Mira said, her voice firm. "I can help us find something. A weapon. A place where the Baron has no control. We can find it, and we can use it against him." Bran leaned forward, his curiosity piqued. "Where is it? What kind of weapon?" Mira turned to face him, her eyes focused, filled with an intensity that Bran had never seen before. "I've been to it once, long ago, when my people still controlled the stars. It's an old station, a research facility. It holds the key to the machines we built. There, you'll find a weapon powerful enough to stop the Baron, to destroy everything he's built." Bran didn't speak for a moment, letting her words sink in. A weapon powerful enough to stop the Baron. It sounded almost too good to be true. He had seen powerful weapons before, ones that could level cities, burn planets, or tear ships apart. But something about this felt different. "You're sure it's still there?" Bran asked carefully. "I'm sure," Mira replied. "I can feel it. It's in the heart of the Nebula Wastes, a place few dare to go. The Baron doesn't know about it. He wouldn't dare look for it in such a dangerous place. But we can reach it if we move quickly." The Nebula Wastes. Bran had heard of it before, an area of space filled with treacherous asteroid fields, unstable nebulae, and unpredictable gravity wells. It was a place where ships disappeared without a trace, and even the bravest pilots didn't survive for long. But the promise of a weapon that could stop the Baron made it a risk Bran was willing to take. He thought for a moment, weighing the risks. "How long will it take to get there?" Bran asked, already knowing what he had to do. "If we leave, now we can reach it in a few days. But we'll need to be careful. The path through the Nebula Wastes is treacherous, and I can't promise that we won't encounter trouble along the way." Mira paused. "But it's our best chance." Bran took a deep breath, glancing at the map again. He didn't have to think long. They didn't have the luxury of time. The Baron would be coming for them, and if they didn't act soon, they might never get another chance. "We leave now," Bran said, his voice resolute. "Get ready." Mira gave a small nod, and for the first time, Bran saw a flicker of hope in her eyes. The kind of hope that only came from knowing you had a plan, a chance. She moved quickly, her movements calm and purposeful, as she began preparing the ship for the next jump. Bran, meanwhile, checked the ship's systems once more. The Drifter was a decent ship, fast enough to outrun most pursuers, but the journey ahead wouldn't be easy. He wasn't sure if the ship was prepared for what lay ahead in the Nebula Wastes. Still, it was their only option. As Mira settled into her seat, Bran engaged the ship's engines. The Drifter rumbled beneath him, the familiar hum of the engine filling the silence. He set the course for the Nebula Wastes, and as the ship began to move, Bran couldn't help but wonder what they would find there. Would the weapon be enough to stop the Baron? Or would they end up in even more danger than before? The stars blurred into streaks of light as the ship jumped into hyperspace, the journey ahead filled with uncertainty. But Bran knew one thing for sure. They were no longer running. They were going to fight, and no matter what happened, they would face it together. The Drifter had entered the Nebula Wastes, and the deep silence of space settled over the ship. Outside the viewport, the stars seemed to flicker and fade as the ship navigated through dense clouds of gas and dust. Bran's hands were steady on the controls, but his mind was focused. The danger here was real. He could feel it, like the heavy weight of the unknown pressing down on him. But Mira was beside him, her calm presence a reminder that they weren't entirely alone in this. Almost. "There," Bran muttered, adjusting the ship's path slightly to avoid an oncoming cluster of asteroids. The nebula wastes were treacherous, and even the most experienced pilots had been known to get lost or worse, crushed by the unpredictable debris fields that seemed to appear out of nowhere. Mira's voice was soft, but clear. "We'll need to make it through the first wave of the asteroid belt. After that, we can reach the facility, but it will be heavily shielded. The Baron will never find it." Bran glanced over at her. "How do you know that?" Mira's eyes met his, her expression steady. "I was one of the last to see it before the destruction of my people. We made sure it stayed hidden, buried in the heart of the nebula wastes, where no one would dare go." Bran nodded, though he still couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching them. The nebula wastes had an eerie quietness to it, as if it were hiding secrets that only those brave or foolish enough to venture inside would ever uncover. "Let's keep our guard up," Bran said, keeping his voice low. "We may not be alone out here." Mira didn't respond, but the subtle tightening of her posture was enough to show she agreed. Bran had learned not to question her instincts. She had lived through things no one should have to, and her survival instincts were sharp. The ship crept through the cloud of gas, the sensors going wild as the interference from the nebula made it harder to navigate. Bran adjusted the controls once more, but it was clear the drifter was struggling to maintain a steady course. The asteroid field ahead grew larger on the radar. Bran's jaw tightened. He had been in worse situations before, but this was different. He wasn't just fighting for himself now. He was fighting for Mira, for a future where she didn't have to run, where she wasn't alone. "Brace yourself," Bran called out to Mira, his voice firm. "We're about to hit the asteroid field." Mira nodded, her expression unreadable. She didn't flinch or hesitate. She was ready. The drifter surged forward as Bran expertly steered the ship between the massive floating rocks. The asteroid field was a swirling chaos of jagged stones, each one moving at unpredictable speeds. Bran's heart raced as the ship veered sharply to the right, narrowly avoiding an asteroid that would have crushed them if they'd been even a second slower. "We need to get through this," Bran muttered, his eyes scanning the debris around them. He could feel the ship rattling under the strain as he pushed it faster, the engines humming with effort. Behind them, the cloud of dust and gas swirled like a storm, the nebula making the stars seem farther away, more distant. Mira's calm voice broke through the tension. "You're doing well. Just keep steady." Her words were a small comfort, but Bran didn't take his eyes off the path ahead. He was the one guiding them through this mess. He was the one keeping them alive. The ship shook again as an asteroid hit the side, and Bran cursed under his breath. The hull was strong, but it wouldn't take many more impacts before something important gave way. "I can't keep this up forever," Bran said, his voice strained. "We need to find a safe route through." Mira closed her eyes for a moment, as though feeling the very essence of the nebula itself. Bran could see the concentration on her face, the way her fingers twitched as if she were guiding the ship herself. "Hold steady," she said again, her voice more forceful this time. "Trust me." Bran didn't hesitate. He locked his focus on the path, letting Mira's calm energy guide him. He could sense it now, the subtle pull of the nebula's gravity, like a quiet song urging them forward. And then, as if by some miracle, the field started to clear. The swirling clouds of gas and asteroids parted, revealing a path ahead, clear and open. Bran exhaled sharply, feeling the tension in his body loosen. "We made it," he said quietly, though he knew the danger wasn't over yet. The calm of the space ahead felt too peaceful after the chaos they had just endured. But Bran knew it was only temporary. The deeper they went into the wastes, the more dangerous it would become. They still had to find the facility, and even if they did, the Baron wasn't far behind. "Keep your eyes on the scanners," Mira said, her voice steady but firm. "We may not be alone for much longer." Bran nodded, keeping the ship on course. He didn't know what would happen once they reached the facility, but one thing was clear. They couldn't afford any more mistakes. They had a weapon to find, and a battle to win. The door slid open with a soft hiss, revealing a large, dimly lit control room. The air inside was heavy with the smell of dust and old machinery. Bran and Mira stepped cautiously inside, their boots echoing on the cold metal floor. The room was filled with rows of ancient consoles, their screens flickering faintly. Most of the equipment was offline, but there was something about the atmosphere that made Bran uneasy. It was as though the room was alive, holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. Mira's eyes scanned the room with a quiet intensity. She had been here once, long ago, but now it felt like an entirely different place. The control panels were covered in dust, but Mira could still recognize the faint traces of her people's technology, delicate and complex, built to last. "This is it," Mira said, her voice barely above a whisper. "This is where the weapon was kept." Bran nodded, his heart pounding in his chest. He had a feeling that what they were about to uncover was more than just a weapon. It was a symbol of everything Mira had lost and everything they hoped to regain. But the more he thought about it, the more uncertain he became. What if the weapon didn't work? What if they couldn't use it against the Baron? Mira approached one of the consoles, her fingers brushing over the dusty surface. "I remember how to activate it," she said softly, her voice steady but filled with a deep, old sadness. "But it won't be easy. This system is old, and I'll need to bypass a few security protocols." Bran kept his eyes on the room, watching for any signs of danger. The silence was almost oppressive, and every movement seemed to echo through the cold, empty space. The feeling that they were not alone lingered in the back of his mind, but he pushed it away. They couldn't afford distractions now. Mira's fingers danced over the controls with surprising ease, despite the age of the system. The screens flickered on, casting a pale blue light across her face. Bran could see the concentration in her eyes as she worked, the way she was reaching into the heart of the old machine, pulling out something from deep within. After a long moment, she looked up at him, her face a mix of determination and worry. "It's activating, but the system is running on limited power. We don't have much time before it shuts down again." Bran's gaze shifted to the monitors as they slowly began to display strange symbols, some of them unfamiliar. The weapon, whatever it was coming online, but the power drain was visible. It wouldn't take long for the station's systems to go dark again, and then they'd be back to square one. "How long do we have?" Bran asked, his voice urgent. Mira bit her lip, her fingers still moving swiftly over the controls. "Maybe 10 minutes, 15 at most. After that, the station will reset itself." Bran's pulse quickened. "We don't have time to waste." Without another word, he moved toward the large metal door at the far side of the room. There had to be more to this facility. If they were going to stop the Baron, they needed to find out everything the station had to offer. Mira glanced at him, her brow furrowing. "Where are you going?" "We need to find the core," Bran said. "If there's a weapon here, it's not just going to be a blaster or a ship's cannon. There has to be something bigger, something that can take down the Baron once and for all. Mira hesitated for a moment, but then nodded. You're right. But be careful. This station may be more than just abandoned. There's still power running through it, and I don't trust that it won't activate some kind of defense system. Bran didn't respond, his mind already focused on the task ahead. He moved quickly through the dark halls, the air thick with the scent of age and forgotten history. His footsteps were cautious but steady as he made his way deeper into the station. As he turned a corner, he stopped. The sound of footsteps echoed down the hallway. Not his own. Bran's hand instinctively went to his blaster, but he didn't draw it yet. His heart raced as he peered into the shadows. He could see nothing. The footsteps continued, growing louder. Whoever or whatever was out there, they were getting closer. He pressed himself against the wall, holding his breath. He could feel the tension in the air. The station had been silent for so long. What had changed? A shadow moved across the hallway. Bran couldn't make out any details, but he knew something was there. Someone. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up. Slowly he pulled his blaster from its holster and steadied it in his hand. He wasn't sure if it was the best weapon for what lay ahead, but it was all he had. The footsteps stopped. Silence returned. But this time it wasn't the usual, comforting silence of an empty station. It was something darker, something alive. Bran held his ground, ready for whatever came next. The silence inside the drifter felt unnerving after the chaos of the asteroid field. The engines hummed steadily, and the stars ahead now seemed almost too calm, too still. Bran kept his hands tight on the controls, his eyes flicking between the scanners and the vast expanse of the nebula wastes. He had no way of knowing how much farther they had to go. The nebula's cloud of gas and dust distorted everything, and it was difficult to get a clear reading of what lay ahead. Mira sat beside him, her gaze fixed ahead, her expression calm but focused. Bran knew she was feeling the weight of the journey, too. She had led them this far, but now, as they neared the facility, it was clear they were about to step into something far more dangerous. He could sense it in the way Mira's posture had shifted, tighter, more aware. Whatever was coming next, they would need to be ready for it. I don't like how quiet it is, Bran said after a long silence, his voice low. Too quiet. Mira turned to him, her eyes sharp. Don't let your guard down. The wastes are filled with dangers, some of which are unseen. She glanced at the scanners, her fingers tapping lightly on the console. We're close. Bran nodded. How much? Further, just beyond this next cluster of stars, she replied, her voice steady. The facility is hidden within the remnants of an old gas giant. It's easy to miss if you don't know where to look. As they continued, Bran's heart raced. The facility they were heading toward was their only hope. But it was more than just a weapon. The very idea of what it represented, the last remains of Mira's people, carried weight. It was a place filled with memories of a lost civilization, of a time before the Baron's betrayal. The stars ahead began to shift in their view, and Bran could see the dim outline of a gas giant in the distance. It was enormous, its swirling clouds of gases glowing faintly in the nebula's light. As they approached, Bran could make out the faint outline of a large, broken station hidden within the gas giant's rings, a facility that Mira had described. It was ancient, and though time had worn it down, it still stood firm. We're here, Mira said, her voice calm but laced with anticipation. Bran brought the drifter in for a closer look. The station was nearly hidden within the rings, with only the faintest signals reaching the ship's scanners. The rest of the surrounding space was quiet, almost too quiet. It felt like they were walking into a ghost's home, a place where nothing had moved in years. But Bran knew better than to let that fool him. The Baron would have no idea this place still existed, but it didn't mean they were safe. "Let's dock carefully," Bran said. "We don't know who or what is still inside." Mira nodded, her gaze never leaving the station. She had been here once, long ago, but the passage of time and the destruction of her people had likely left it forgotten and abandoned. The drifter slowed as it neared the docking port. The station loomed large in the viewport now, a strange mix of ancient technology and forgotten memories. As Bran gently maneuvered the ship into the docking bay, he couldn't help but wonder what they would find inside. Would the weapon be ready? Would the technology still work? The bay doors slid open with a soft hiss, and Bran expertly guided the ship inside. The lights inside the docking bay flickered on, casting long shadows across the cold, metal floors. The facility felt abandoned, dead. But Mira's calm expression told Bran that they were exactly where they needed to be. The moment the ship settled, Bran turned to Mira. "You ready?" Mira nodded slowly, her fingers tightening on the armrests. "I'm ready, but stay close. There may be more than just machines in there." Bran gave a small nod, unstrapping himself from his seat and standing. He grabbed his jacket and checked the blaster at his side. No telling what they would encounter in this ancient place. It had been forgotten for so long. He didn't trust that it would stay quiet. They moved toward the airlock, and Bran could hear the sound of their footsteps echoing in the silence. It was as if the whole station was holding its breath. Mira activated the door controls, and the airlock hissed open, revealing a dark hallway beyond. The facility was eerily quiet. Dust and debris filled the air as they stepped inside. Bran's boots clicked against the metal floor, and he kept his hand close to the blaster, ready for anything. Mira moved in front, her posture tense but her steps sure. "I've been here before," she whispered, "but it feels different now, like it's waiting." Bran kept his voice low. "Let's make sure it doesn't wait too long." They moved deeper into the station, their footsteps quiet in the abandoned halls. The lights flickered sporadically, casting strange shadows on the walls. Bran had to fight the feeling that they were being watched. The place felt too still, like it was asleep, waiting for something to wake it up. As they rounded a corner, the darkness deepened. A low hum filled the air, as if something inside the station had come to life. "This is it," Mira said, pointing to a door at the end of the hall. "The control room." Bran felt his pulse quicken. Everything had led them to this moment. He couldn't turn back now. They walked toward the door, ready for whatever lay beyond. Bran's heart raced as the footsteps grew louder, echoing down the empty hallway. Every instinct in him screamed to be ready. He pressed himself further into the shadows, his breath steady, his hand still gripping the blaster. The silence felt thick, like something was waiting just out of sight. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up, and his mind raced through every possibility of what could be lurking ahead. The footsteps stopped, and Bran froze, barely daring to breathe. He knew it wasn't just an illusion. There was something here with him, something moving in the dark, something that had been hidden away in this old station for a long time. His pulse quickened. Then a low hum filled the air, followed by a soft clicking sound. Bran's eyes darted to the source. The noise was coming from behind a nearby door, just a few feet away. The door was slightly ajar, and Bran could see a faint glow from within. The air was heavy, thick with the scent of old machinery, and there was something else, a metallic tang that made the back of his throat tighten. Taking a deep breath, Bran approached the door slowly, each step measured and cautious. He reached for the handle, his fingers trembling slightly, but he steadied himself. This wasn't the time for mistakes. He couldn't afford to panic. The weapon, the core, the Baron. The door creaked open just enough for Bran to peer inside. His eyes narrowed as he tried to make out the shapes in the dim light. At first, all he saw were old, rusted machines. Then his gaze shifted to the center of the room, and his blood ran cold. Standing in the middle of the room was a figure. Tall, humanoid but not human. Its face was obscured by a helmet, but its eyes glowed faintly from behind the visor. Bran couldn't see its features clearly, but the way it moved, the way it stood still and silent, sent a chill down his spine. It was like nothing Bran had ever encountered before. The figure didn't move, but Bran could feel its presence. There was something off about it, something wrong. He couldn't waste any more time. He needed to find Mira. Whatever this was, it wasn't part of the original station's design. It had to be connected to whatever was powering the facility now. Bran reached for his communicator, but before he could activate it, the figure spoke. "You shouldn't be here," a voice said, cold and mechanical, echoing in the quiet room. The words seemed to reverberate through Bran's chest, sending a wave of unease over him. Bran's grip on the blaster tightened. "Who are you?" The figure didn't respond right away. Instead, it took a slow, deliberate step toward him. Bran's finger twitched on the trigger, but he didn't fire. Not yet. He was waiting for an answer. "I am the Guardian," the figure finally said, its voice chilling. "I was created to protect this facility. You are not allowed to access it." Bran's mind raced. A Guardian? What kind of technology was this? Was it a machine or something else entirely? He glanced at the console across the room. Mira. She needed to know about this. She needed to know what they were dealing with. "What are you protecting?" Bran demanded, his voice steady. "The weapon, the core." The Guardian didn't answer immediately. Instead, it took another step closer, its presence overwhelming. Bran's heart hammered in his chest. He was trapped. If the Guardian attacked, he wouldn't stand a chance. His mind raced for a plan. He needed to get Mira. He needed to... Suddenly, the station's lights flickered and buzzed, and the low hum from the core grew louder. The room shook, ever so slightly, and Bran felt the vibrations in his bones. The Guardian's head tilted slightly, as though sensing the change in the air. "The weapon is not for you," the Guardian intoned, its voice becoming more forceful. "It was never meant to be used." Bran's eyes narrowed. "Who decided that?" The Guardian's eyes glowed brighter now, a deep, unsettling blue. "It was chosen, and it will not fall into the hands of those who would misuse it." Bran's pulse raced. It was clear that the Guardian wasn't just protecting the facility, it was guarding something incredibly important. He needed to know more. "Listen to me," Bran said, his voice calmer now. "I'm not here to misuse anything. We're here to stop the Baron. He's coming for this place, and we need whatever's here to fight him. The people of this galaxy need to be free of him." For a long moment, the Guardian stood still, its glowing eyes studying Bran. The air between them crackled with tension, and for a fleeting second, Bran wondered if it would attack. But then, slowly, the figure stepped back. "The Baron," the Guardian said, its voice softer now, almost sorrowful. "He cannot be stopped by force alone. This weapon was never meant to destroy. It was meant to heal. But if it falls into the wrong hands, it will bring only destruction." Bran swallowed hard. He had no idea what this weapon really was, but the Guardian's words gave him hope. Perhaps they weren't too late. Just then, Bran's communicator buzzed softly in his pocket. He reached for it quickly, not taking his eyes off the Guardian. "Mira," he said into the comm. "Bran!" Mira's voice came through, filled with urgency. "I've unlocked the core, but we have to hurry. I don't think we have much time before the Baron finds us." Bran looked back at the Guardian. "We're not alone," he said quietly. "But I think we can work together." The Guardian did not respond, but its eyes softened. It stepped aside, as if granting Bran permission to proceed. Bran didn't hesitate. He moved toward the core, ready to find the answers he needed before the Baron could reach them.